All right, good evening, everyone. I am so excited to have some amazing Black women in education today to talk about this phenomenal work that has to happen to make sure that our babies get what they need as it relates to education. My name is LaTricea Adams. I'm the president and CEO of Black Millennials for Flint. We are a grassroots organization. We are actually the first and only Black and Latino environmental justice and civil rights organization focused on lead eradication and Black and Brown communities. Our service areas is, of course, representative of our namesake, which is Flint, Michigan. We also work within Memphis, Tennessee, Baltimore, Maryland, and the DC area as well. But today we're going to take it back to our roots of Flint, Michigan, where some phenomenal work is happening around education and serving our children. It is my pleasure to introduce to everyone this evening Principal DeNesha Rawls-Smith. She is the principal of Eagles Nest in Flint, Michigan. And then we have Mrs. Ashley Strozier. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
You got it correct. Yes.
Ooh, look at that. Yes. She is representing Home STEM Academy, also in Flint, Michigan. I am just so excited to hear from some dope Black women. Yes. Black women for the win. You know, if you got any problems, you can always depend and lean on Black women. So I am so excited that you all join us this evening. To open up, if you just like to brag on yourself and introduce yourself a little bit to our audience tonight, and then we'll open up with some good questions. All right. We can start with you, Principal Rawls-Smith.
Okay, no problem. I am DeNesha Rawls-Smith, which you already heard. First of all, I'm a child of God. I have to let y'all know that. I'm very active in my church. I'm married to the wonderful Seaman Smith, and I have 3 children. I also have a niece that stays with me quite a bit and that I'm taking care of. So I have a little family here that we're loving on and supporting. Born and raised in Flint. I'm a Flint girl, you know, I'm the product of Flint Community Schools, and I've served Flint most of my career, you know, so I have a passion for our children, not only in the educational realm, but it's also has been a huge part of my ministry at church. So High Harris Memorial Church of God in Christ. But I think one of the things that you should just know about me is that this work to me is more than just a 9 to 5. It's something that keeps me up. It's something that keeps me on my knees in prayer. I was fortunate to go to school and work and become an educator, but I didn't start off with the path of education. I started off with African studies and anthropology. And it's so funny now that I'm at a school where African studies is a huge part of our curriculum. So I just really am grateful to be able to serve at a school, Eagles Nest Academy, where Dr. Flynn has laid the foundation for us to have a culturally relevant curriculum. So that's me kind of in a nutshell, you know, this passionate educator with a ministry and a mission to really help our children achieve.
All right, that was a good introduction. Come through, Principal. It is so nice again to have you. So, Mrs. Strozier, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm just going to say it's an honor to be here with both of you ladies today. You know, Eagles Nest, if you're familiar with where Homes and Eagles Nest are located, we are down the street neighbors. So it's like, I'm just saying, hey, neighbor, you just round the corner from me. But like Principal Rawls-Smith, I too am a Flintstone to heart, born and raised in Flint, product of the wonderful Flint Community Schools. And it's at Flint Community Schools where I met my lovely husband, my wonderful husband, Pastor Blake D. Strozier. We worship and we are at the Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church in Saginaw, Michigan. But we live, we reside, we work in the city of Flint. A lot of people are familiar with me because I serve in the capacity of the Family Engagement Facilitator. And in that role, I am simply the glue between home and school. I do what I can to help remove any obstacles so that children can go to school and that when they go home, we can add to a positive home environment because we know that children are successful when they can sleep well at night, eat well at night, and they come refreshed, ready to learn the next day. But I'm very active in the community. I too have children of my own. We have 3 3 amazing children, Clarence and Clarissa, and a 7-month-old little girl named Michaela. So hands are full. We're always giving, loving spending time with our family. And, you know, even in this time of quarantine, it was a little bit of an inconvenience, but it was a blessing in all because we were able to spend that much more time together as a family. And I just loved it. So I'm excited to be here with you all today and to answer these hardcore questions because everybody on this phone call, we're all here about Flint kids, and that's what I'm passionate about.
Tracy, you're muted.
There we go. One of the things that I am just so excited about is that this message can touch everybody. One of the things that I really want people to walk away from tonight is to understand the resiliency of Flint. I love that you all are Flint natives. And while I am not a Flint native, even though y'all got my whole heart, I'm from Memphis, and we are 2 very similar cities, 2 very historically African-American cities. And I really want to spotlight Black women in Flint in the realm of education. So that is a perfect segue to get into this conversation and just talk about some of the work that you all have been doing that is really helping Flint families. So our children have missed an unprecedented amount of instructional time, and something we never would have thought that we would see in 2020, right? What are some strategies that can be implemented to compensate for such a large gap in missed instructional time? Anybody can start.
Okay, I don't mind starting. You know, when I think it's a wonderful question because it's really something that schools in our area at least had to immediately adjust to. It's not something that we're going to try to make up when fall comes, but schools have been actively trying to continue that learning. And so I think we have to build upon that. You know, we were thrown into the distance learning experience, online, virtual classrooms. I know my teachers were virtually live throughout the week, providing that face time with the students, that instruction. And that's something that we'll have to continue. I think with what we can do now that we're into the summer months and we face that summer slide that you hear educators talk about, is we have to have open communication with families and put our families in touch with the resources that are available, whether that's online, they could be print documents and sending them home. I know for my school, we are having distance learning online during the summer. And one of the things we're doing is loading those lessons so that scholars can use their accounts and continue to log in and see those lessons, in addition to having those face-to-face conversations via the computer or over the telephone. As we get ready to go back into fall, I would admonish everyone to really start looking at their professional learning communities. You know, and this is kind of for our educators and our educational leaders. We need to get those vertical groups going, those vertical conversations and collaboration. So what I mean by that, you know, your 3rd grade teachers, they need to be talking to those 4th grade teachers in regard to how and what they may have missed along the way, you know, and how they can make up for that. And it'll be a delicate balancing act. And that balancing act will be basically, you know, we can't just spend our whole first 2 months of school in intervention. We have to balance that with the core instruction because we don't want them to continue to get behind. So it's like doing double duty, which we are not, you know, we're not new to that in education, especially in urban education. And then I see some conversations in there in regard to the digital gap. You know, educators have to take that on. Schools have had to take that on this year, distributing Chromebooks, putting your students in contact with those entities like Spectrum and Charter and AT&T that offered online services. That was a big part of our continuing learning plan through this COVID-19, was to make sure that access was given to all of our scholars that wanted it and the families that wanted it. And those that didn't, like I said, we had to send home packets and be available via telephone to talk with our parents and talk with our students as they went over their lessons. I think the biggest thing is collaboration and being available. We need to be available to our families and to the scholars during that time, during the time now and in the fall.
Yeah, I think that it is definitely so important to think about all the stakeholders. So thinking about all the power players in this. You know, I really like the fact that you talked about PLCs and professional learning communities. Definitely, you know, there are people with whole degrees in instructional technology, you know, and so everyone is not an automatic expert on how to deliver lessons virtually.
Right.
So I definitely agree that there's a need there, and just being really considerate of the parents, the children, and the teachers
Yes.
are all being impacted by this. I know one of the biggest things that I hear from parents is, I'm not a teacher. I'm a
Right.
parent, but I'm not a teacher, you know? And so I think more than ever, this is just a great opportunity for everybody to work together, right? Even though this is not a situation that we, you know, plan for, but to see how closely community and schools are working together is magical. Mrs. Strozier, Ashley, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that the COVID-19 crisis, it really gave us a huge microscope to see where we have flaws in our educational community right now. Because if you did not have a strong communication with your child's teacher, with your school, with your building, if you weren't already intact with how to get in contact with somebody, if you didn't, let's just simple things. If you did not know who your child's teacher was, those things, if you did not know that information, you are really doing your child a disservice when teachers and parents, well, teachers and school buildings were trying to get out information, trying to give out work packets, trying to give out technology. None of that stuff was even accessible if the teacher could not get in contact with you. So a lot of parents, yes, were saying, I'm not a teacher. I didn't go to school for this. This is why I send my child to school. But we have to take a step back and remember that parents are the first teachers. So even when we're not in crisis, I think this really just put a focus on how much more we need to push parents to be involved. It's more than just going up to get a schedule at the beginning of the school year, getting a calendar, knowing when you don't have school, half days and all of that. And it's more than just being called to the school when there's an issue with your child, or unfortunately we had to confiscate a cell phone because we told your child 1,000,001 times you're not supposed to have it. We have to have more constant communication in a positive way, so that when in times of crisis or when unforeseeable circumstances take place like COVID-19, parents can contact the teachers, the building support staff, the principal, and vice versa. So I feel like there was a huge breakdown because I think we become so reliable on technology that we just look at it later. Well, you know how back in the day you used to get a bunch of junk mail and you just throw it away? I feel like now we're in a society where we treat voicemails like that, because I know with FCS, I was on the wellness team for my school. So we spent times and times again, every single day, calling parents, just doing simple things, wellness checks. Hey, how are you doing? How's your child doing? Do you all need anything? And there were so many more parents that we wish we could have reached, but we couldn't get an answer on the other end of the phone. It could have been maybe there were some personal challenges, maybe their family was affected by COVID, and maybe somebody was in the hospital, maybe somebody had to relocate, or my kids had to go to grandma's house because I was taking care of this person. We understand that real life situations happen, but when those things happen, what is the family plan? Who is the teacher to contact? And those are a lot of open holes that we saw during this time. So moving forward, we're able to make better judgments as far as if there's an emergency, how can we get in contact with your child? How can we get schoolwork to your child? Who do we contact if there are problems? Or on the other end, you know, who do I call if my child is struggling with this math? Where can I get some additional resources from if my child is having a difficult time reading and we're still doing this digital learning? So I think COVID has done a lot for the world of education, but I think it's just going to strengthen us. And also it's going to put more responsibility back on the parents, because as Principal Rawls-Smith has said, they did a lot of preparation, and so did everybody's building. You had no choice but to go full steam ahead just to make sure you can still offer your child the best educational experience possible. But if we're the school and we can't reach you, then how are we able to help your child? And I think if we're keeping the child as the focal point, we need to make sure that it's a two-way communication.
Definitely agree with that. I just want to say, I think one of the benefits that we have with being a small school, I have teachers that really had strong relationships with their parents. And so when this occurred, I mean, we were able to leverage those relationships. It's like each of us had some type of connection with someone. And that really helped us. That helped us to know who needed Chromebooks. We sent out surveys. Our community was really active with responding and giving us that feedback. Hey, I need a Chromebook. I need access to the internet. How can you help? You know, we have internet, but I would prefer my child not to be on that. And so that constant communication and dialogue back and forth allowed us to make adjustments. And just like Mrs. Strozier spoke about, you know, definitely those wellness checks and those phone calls, they let us know the pulse of what was going on in our school community. And I know that was true for them too. And then you can make adjustments and you can be compassionate and display empathy when those things are occurring. And then when scholars are ready to re-engage that learning atmosphere, you're able to start up, you know, and go ahead and move forward. And you have to take it where people are in their own personal homes. And, you know, grief is real and trauma is real. And so you have to be ready to respond. And yeah, school didn't look exactly like we thought it would, right? It was a pandemic, but the communication, I mean, the team, your team, you know, the teachers, those counselors, those people are help bridge that gap. You know, I may not have that relationship with Mrs. Smith, but you may. And so it really helps when you're able to do that. I agree totally.
And then if I can add, I want parents to know that it's okay not to know the answer to everything. Yeah, I want parents to know that it's okay if you're struggling with just trying to help your child, just turn in an assignment. I'm pretty sure prior to March the 13th, I think that was the day we all shut down, not many parents were used to using Google Docs and Google Classroom and Apple Classroom. And so that's why several times during the months that we were down, I was giving one-on-one lessons. Okay, this is how you can send your child's assignment in. And just using simple technology, but also teaching new life skills. Because when you think about what life skills were 20 years ago, it was make sure you know how to sweep, you can wash dishes, you know how to wash clothes. Nowadays, it's your second grader needs to know how to compose an email successfully. They need to know the difference between reply and reply all. They need to know how to send a confirmation, because if this is where technology is taking us, it's our job as parents to make sure that my child is prepared for this. So I had to create an email address, one for Clarissa, one for Clarence. And so when teachers were like, okay, what's your email address? Send it straight to my child. And guess what? My child has it on their tablet. I have it on my phone. So I can say, hey, Clarence, I think you have an email. So that's me putting that ownership back on the child. And a lot of times when teaching my parents and working with my parents, I use my own self as an example, because I had to tell them, I'm learning just like you are. Do not think that just because I work at the school that I have an advantage. No, I just have a list of emails I can go to a lot faster than you. But then that's when we put that list of emails out there so that everybody had that same accessibility. So the last couple of months, it was truly a learning process, but I feel like it brought our schools closer together. And I feel like it brought that community piece that was missing for certain parents that maybe they felt a little distant. They didn't have that much communication prior to, but now it's the norm. And this is a good norm to move forward with.
Yes, y'all did a perfect segue into this technology piece. You know, I think that sometimes as both parents and educators, we kind of take for granted what our babies are prepared for. Our young people, they are so technologically savvy. All we have to do is do a shift. Yeah. You know, I was just saying earlier today, and some of my younger friends were laughing at me because I said, I don't understand how to use TikTok. I don't understand how to do Snapchat or any of that, you know, but our young people are just so dynamic and versatile, you know. So I really love the fact that you talked about how important it is to make sure that those same savvy skills that they have, you know, can cross over into what they need to truly gain access to some skills that they really should have been introduced to a long time ago. I know even like in the 90s and the 2000s, you know, not to age myself too much, but even with those big clunky computers, you know, we still learn how to use them, right? And I think somewhere along the way, you know, as we are in an undated with standardized testing, when we are in an undated with like trying to make it through, you know, curriculum, you know, you kind of just lose sight of those things that are essential for life. Mm-hmm. And you are absolutely right, Mrs. Strozier, when you talked about like this was an eye-opener. Mm-hmm. You know, I think about even in my role working for my district here in Memphis, when we talk about drills and safety plans, mm-hmm. we ain't never planned for a pandemic. But you know, we really always should. You know, so when you talk about collaboration, it's not just our school leaders, it's our district leaders, it's our community leaders. I think about all of the community organizations that have really been instrumental to supporting everybody during these tough times. So you all definitely dropped a lot of gems for folks tonight. All right, so shifting the conversation just a little bit. So thinking about, for example, we would be remiss if we didn't take into consideration the Flint water crisis, mm-hmm. And how that has caused a spark, not a spark, but a spike in special education, the special education population, mm-hmm. where it's nearly doubled with our babies that have IEPs. So in addition to it being a challenge for parents, for their students with general ed, the special education programming definitely saw a hit. Mm-hmm. What services and support can be provided to our most vulnerable kids, and how can community organizations get involved to help fill in those gaps?
You can go first, Mr. Strozier. I keep going first. You can go first.
Look, I'm trying to practice proper Zoom etiquette by not over talking somebody. Well, a lot of the services that general ed students and our learning support students that may need, or the service they may need during any time, whether we're in school, out of school, those services are always available. We have, thanks to our community school model with Flint Community Schools and our partnership with the Crim Fitness Foundation and Community Education, we have our wellness teams, we have our school nurses in every building, we have social workers, and that's just not for elementary, that's for kindergarten through 12th grade. So the youngest baby to the oldest baby. But what I love about community schools is that they service the entire family. So say if there is a third grader at this school and maybe the child needs some glasses, you'll have somebody like the wonderful Miss D, who's our community health worker. She'll make a phone call. She'll be that person that calls when the child is absent. Hey, we just want to check on little Billy Bob Joe. How's your kid doing today? Are they at home sick? But then that conversation goes to, well, if your child is sick, do you need help getting to a doctor? Okay, you need help getting to a doctor, but do you have health insurance? They can take care of all of that on one phone call, because that's just a much needed resource. We have it so that children and families should not have to struggle. There are just some things that we can make that connection happen, so that, again, going back to removing that obstacle so that children can go to school and they can go home safely. Community ed has provided a much needed support, and they've helped us provide that whole child approach so that your child is receiving a proper education, but their mental mind is being addressed, their physical mind is being addressed, their emotional mind is being addressed, but those opportunities are available for the entire family, because you just can't take care of the child. You have to take care of everybody in the household. Even when we were out during this entire time, we had different food opportunities available. I know that we were Let's see. I know that on some days, because Mr. Johnson would send me a screenshot of your flyer for Eagles Nest. Okay, we got a full giveaway on this day. Then I'll shoot my eyes back to him. Well, we're at Northwestern on this day and at IAF another day. But again, those food giveaways were a partnership with community education. Again, open to the entire community. So that's why a lot of times we share information with our neighbors, because we have to take care of our community. We have to. Doesn't matter if my child goes to your school down the street or your kid is hanging out in my parking lot. It's about taking care of who's in our home and who's in our streets and who's in our community. So those are wonderful resources that we have available in all of our schools. And I use them myself with my child. She broke a pair of glasses last year, and Lord Jesus, she needed to be able to see, but it was, okay, where can I go get these glasses fixed really fast without having to take them here and there? And Ms. D was able to give me that type of information. So parents just have to, going back to the previous question, parents just ask. We have answers, but don't think that anybody's going to shame you because you don't know, because when you ask a question, then maybe that's a question that we need to put the answer out there better for everybody to reach.
And I agree. I agree that we have to have open communication. I know specifically when I think about special education during this pandemic and really the fulfillment of their IEP, right? We know that our scholars that have special needs, they have individual education plans. And so in those plans, they have a variety of services. It could be physical therapy, occupational therapy, social work. You know, there are a lot of things that they're provided, and to suddenly shift to online or suddenly shift to distance with those provisions, it can be difficult. And so it took a lot of communication and definitely organizing those providers. Like I said before about academics, some things did have to go online. You know, we would sit just like we're sitting and have social work services. We repurposed, people are being repurposed to fill that need of those wellness checks. So you can reach the broad mass of students that we're serving on that caseload with just contacting them, checking in, seeing how they're doing, but making sure what was very important to me was that our scholars did not go without service just because they could not enter that building. That is not acceptable. And so getting those providers on the phone, getting those providers face-to-face. I have a lovely special education coordinator, Dwayne Smart, who organized all of those things so those services would still be met. You know, we saw a lot of things come down from our governor and from our state superintendent that allowed us to have waivers for a certain amount of time and things like that. But ultimately, we wanted to make sure we stuck as close and was aligned to that IEP as much as we can. And then we have to leverage our resources in our community. I mean, we work with the Genesee Health System, with the Blue Bus. They are guys saying you have to find a way to get these wraparound services pulled in. So I think between the communication with parents in regard to what's needed, the community connecting with the resources that are in our community. We have My Children's Health Centers. We have so many resources. And so like Ms. Strozier is saying, we just have to ask. You know, that's all we have to do, you know, open our mouths and ask for what is needed, because no one should go lacking just because the world is sick. Like my little niece would say, the world is sick. Well, our babies should not suffer because the world is sick. You know, we still have to find a way. And I do believe through collaboration with community partners, communication with parents, and really repurposing your own staff to meet those needs, you can get it done.
I absolutely agree with that. I love the emphasis on reaching out to these community-based organizations. They literally exist to help fill the gaps. No one should ever feel like they have to do everything by themselves, you know, and a lot of these organizations, as crazy as it sounds, like they wait to be able to go in and to help. And so I think, you know, this is just a learning experience for everyone. I circle back to what Mrs. Strozier talked about with just kind of knowing what these gaps are. I think that it is imperative to stay in constant communication with these organizations, bringing it, you know, forward with your school leadership and staff to talk about, okay, we learned this today. Because every day is something new, but you know, really archiving all these things so that you know, no matter what may happen, we know for certain that we can still maintain educating our children and supporting our family. So I think that is an excellent perspective. I also love the resilience with making sure that our babies that need the most support get it.
Yeah.
I tell you what, this whole experience has made me think about old school educating. So very much like y'all, I grew up in the church, and this experience makes me think about my grandmother and my great grandmother doing home visits, right? You know, coming to see about you. Thinking about how years ago, like it wasn't anything for your teacher to, you know, show up in your house, for your teacher lived in your neighborhood. And I think that this whole experience is kind of getting us back to the basics, where really you get to see live and in person what community connected with schools actually looks like. And again, you know, we hate that COVID-19 brought us to this place, you know, but it is such a blessing to see how everyone, you know, worked really diligently to make our children's environment as less disruptive as possible. So thank y'all. Yes, all of these gems. So we're going to transition to the next question. So you all talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to hear more. I know you talked about how you've been able to engage the community and support families with food. So one thing, and this is just a tidbit, so since students are spending so much more time at home, research shows that while lead can be found in water, it is most commonly found in a home due to lead paint, especially those homes built before 1978. And if Flint is anything like Memphis, DC, Baltimore, we have some older homes in our communities. So fresh fruits and vegetables like green leafy vegetables and fresh fruits help to absorb lead in the body. How can schools and the Flint community collaborate to ensure our children have access to fresh and healthy foods?
Yeah, I think that's something that, you know, I know all of the schools in Genesee County were able to leverage the supports for the S&P, you know, they call it the SNAP grant, where we were able to provide breakfast and lunch during the pandemic, in spite of us not going to the school. You know, I know for our school, we had to begin to rethink. We were going directly to every person's home to start. And we started learning about COVID, you know, increasing and the overexposure. So we had to rethink how we would distribute food, and we came up with a drive-through option, and then began to maintain that throughout this time. In addition to that, we worked with North Flint Reinvestment Corporation, which is our management company. Dr. Flynn is the president of that, CEO and founder of our school. And we worked with them just throughout the month of June, and continuing with vegetable boxes and fruit boxes and dairy boxes. And I mean, even the schools that my children attend, they were doing the same thing. So again, it's knowing where the resources are and putting that information into the hands of the parents. I would encourage people, look at your intermediate school district website, you know, and in schools to make that information available. They had a list and a map of where you can receive those different food services. And then our federal government made an increase in benefits for those of us that are receiving benefits through EBT or your bridge card. You know, they increase the amount of money that you could have, and you can double those dollars at the farmer's market. But sometimes we just don't know, you know, so we try to really communicate that information, email, telephone calls, one call, little text messages, just to make sure our parents were aware where the food was, how they could how they could receive those food items. And I'm telling you, we was right. You're right about Mr. Johnson. He's sending you a flyer, Ms. Young. We have us, you know, we have our families telling us that hey, I went to that bus yesterday, you know. So it's just, I love what I saw in regard to making sure the children in our city did not go hungry. You just saw schools everywhere, making sure that people were fed and they had the resources they needed to know where to go and get more. I'll never forget the last couple of weeks, we had parents telling us that their freezers were full. You know, they didn't need anything else. And what a problem to have. What a problem to have during a pandemic where we all come together and we're feeding the community in such a way that they're telling us, okay, hold up, you know, stop the presses, you know. And I think that's the key, knowing where the resources are as a school, communicating that, getting that information to the hands of our families, and being, you know, distributors when you can. We have Meet Up and Eat Up that's coming up in the summer where they'll have plenty of posts for families to receive food. So I think that's powerful. We're growing through this, right? Like, it's a pandemic, it's traumatic. We are experiencing so many things, emotional ups and downs and roller coasters of you know, emotions, but we are coming together as a community for these babies. And I think that's powerful. I think that's powerful.
You're right. God is moving. Not to, you know, turn this into, you know, a shout Zoom tonight, but God is moving. He really is. I mean, whew. All right, Miss Strozier, before I start shouting, what's your take on getting access to healthy foods for our babies?
I mean, just to echo everything Principal Rawls-Smith said, I mean, there was a list that went out and it was updated quite frequently. And if you didn't have access to the list, or if you didn't know how to pull up the list, somebody or a parent could just contact somebody on the wellness team, or they would check out our social media page. But also it brought to parents' attention, okay, what can I do to be self-sufficient? So the questions I started to start receiving was, well, how can I go about starting my own garden? I need to start growing my own green items, my own leafy green vegetables, my own produce. And so I had to go to my friends at the Crim Fitness Foundation. Okay, hey, I have parents that want to know, how do they start, you know, preparing their backyards for wanting to grow their own crops? So it puts the mind frame back into a place where it's like, okay, I never want to have to go through this again. Never. Because I can remember just even a few weeks ago, I try to take shortcuts while cooking. So I like to buy the bag of the frozen green peppers and onions mix. And I went to 5 different Krogers and could not find it. So we had to talk about, and that was just an example I had shared with a parent. Now, what if I would have took advantage of the couponing classes that we offered last year, and I would have stocked up in my deep freezer? It's that always, and you know, during this process, I heard my grandmother in the back of my head, always be prepared, always be prepared. And in some senses, none of us were prepared for this. We didn't have flour stocked up. We didn't have sugar stocked up. Those items were gone, like within that first weekend. So we had to start teaching our parents, okay, this is how you prepare. This is the proper way to create a storage space in your basement where there's not damp space at, so that you can have shelf stable items. So it changes your whole mind frame where, okay, let me get through this crisis. I'm taking down notes, but I will never get to a place where this is where I'm struggling at again. And I say it all the time to everybody in my close circle. If you come out of this crisis with the same mind frame, you need to go back, because you missed it. This is a learning point for everybody. And you just had to make sure you had extra laundry detergent, extra dishwashing soap, so that you didn't have to go to the store as often, because it's not let me go grab this real quickly. No, you had to be prepared as if you cannot leave your house for an extended amount of time. But also you had to make sure you had things that your children need: pencils, crayons, erasers, paper, a lot of paper. I never realized how much paper my children went through just to do 2 assignments, because it's the whole, well, I don't want to turn in anything sloppy. But it's just, you seriously have to look at everything you've gone through the last 3 months and say, okay, what could I have done for my family, for myself, and in a professional capacity, what could I have done to service my students better, my parents better? So in the event something like this happens again, I'll be prepared, and I can teach others how to be prepared.
You just spoke a word there. You definitely made me think about my grandparents. Go ahead, Ms. Rawls-Smith.
So I was just thinking, just in regard to our food boxes, we were partnering with North Flint Food Market, and we don't have a grocery store in North Flint, you know, so I can't imagine, you know, it's just what the pandemic did to the world, it was compounded, you know, and what it did to Flint because of already being in a crisis with the Flint water crisis, already dealing with food shortage because we don't have a grocery store serving North Flint. And so, you know, it made me think long and hard about the North Flint food market that Dr. Flint has been talking about, because it's like we need something there for our families, something there that's going to provide fresh food and fresh fruit and vegetables and everything that we know combats lead. And so it made me think about that when you were talking. It's just like, yeah, we have to do something. It's a crisis for the world, but it's a crisis for us in Flint, you know, because we don't have access.
The food desert during this time, because again, thinking about where our schools are physically located, the nearest grocery store is Kroger in Mount Morris, or Great Giant on North Saginaw Street, or Kroger in Flushing, but then to go to a Walmart, you have to go even further out. So to my families that don't have a car, rely on the bus, and trying to travel via bus in the middle of a crisis with a mask on and gloves on, and you still gotta carry your groceries back and forth. I mean, there were several times parents called and said, hey, who can I just get a ride from? Just to go to the grocery store, just to get a gallon of milk. It's little things like that. And it's like, we truly are a food desert on the north side.
We are, yeah.
And parents really felt that during this crisis. So it didn't matter how many benefits you gave them, how much extra this, extra that. If they can't get to the place where they need to get what they need, it is pointless.
Yeah, because we had MTA that shut down, LaTricea. You know, you may not know that, like the public transportation system. So these meals that schools were providing, these vegetable boxes and fruit boxes that are being given away, it's important. It's needed, you know, because there is a deficit in this city, in the North Flint area for groceries. I mean, when I was little, we got on the MTA bus, we went to Meyer. I said hi to the same greeter every Saturday, and we were able to get our food. We got back on the bus, we went home and to the Evergreen Regencies where I lived, or River Village where we lived, until Mom got a car. And we couldn't do that. You know, our families couldn't do that. So it was vital that schools support in this way. And it's just, it brings me to tears to think about it. And it is just a blessing the way the community came together and continues to come together to serve all these families. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I have to keep my emotions together. I'm real sensitive though.
I get passionate, so I'm not mad now. Don't think I'm
Yeah. So that actually is a really good segue. So thinking about like some of the needs that existed beyond COVID, right? So some of the needs that were that existed prior to the pandemic, you know, things were exacerbated after COVID-19. So as we think about the road to recovery, because we know that this is not going to last forever. We're gonna come out of this like a phoenix. But thinking about the road to recovery as we think about reopening schools, we know that school funding is going to look a lot different. So if there are local or state or federal elected officials listening tonight, can you describe the gaps in funding that need to be addressed? And what do you anticipate being the greatest need?
I'm trying to see when to jump in. But, you know, we're looking at a $1 billion, more than a $1 billion cut to school funding in Michigan. Okay. And so when you look at that per pupil, you're looking at $650 to $700 per child in your school, and you're losing that funding. So when I think about how that will impact our schools, I think about personnel. Some of the same individuals we've talked about tonight that help us build these wonderful check-in teams or wellness teams. I think about these extra people that were able to provide wraparound services, even teachers, even interventionists, different things, different personnel. You could see cuts because you don't have the funding to employ them, not to mention the resources. I mean, we gave out over 120 Chromebooks, you know, and we definitely want to replenish those. We want to continue to use those if we can. But when you go to purchase these items, it takes funding. You know, we have to begin to prepare our infrastructure. If you're going back to school in the fall and we go back face to face, we're looking at 6 feet distance between you and me, where we used to sit on the carpet together, you know, and now we have to put down markers that say where you can sit, where you can stand. It takes funding to do those things. And so my appeal and my plea to anyone that's listening that can make a difference is don't do it. Our babies, we can't afford to make those cuts. We need our social workers. We need our interventionists. We need our aides and our counselors. We need our deans and assistant principals. We need everyone. We need everyone in our school community to provide the learning that needs to take place. And with funding cuts, we're looking at a cut to personnel. We're looking at infrastructure things that we can't do. We're looking at wraparound services that we could lose. And I just think that we need help. We need our federal government to kick in. You know, we are blessed and we are grateful for the CARES Act and what it provided and those fundings, and we need more of it because we have used those resources during this pandemic, during this school closure to meet the needs of our scholars. And in the fall, they're going to come back. And you know what I see an increase in? It's not just going to be the students that left out with mental concerns and social emotional issues. We have students coming back and they have experienced trauma over these past months. And we have to be ready and prepared to meet their needs when they walk through our doors. And we cannot do that without funding. We cannot do that without funding. And so I think everything that we worked so hard for, all the growth that we've made during this season to meet the needs of these scholars, we could lose it. We don't want to go backwards, but we could lose it if we do not have the funding to meet the needs and the challenges that's faced before us. I think about the Google Classrooms and the Seesaw programs, all these online programs and devices. It takes funding for that. It takes funding for that. And so if you're listening, you know, President Trump, if you're listening, you know, or if you're listening, hey, I'm talking to whoever will hear me, we need that funding. And our babies in Flint, we deserve that fund. We've given up too much already. Just the water crisis alone, we've given up too much already. And so we can't give up nothing else. We can't give back nothing. We need more. We need more. We can't give back nothing else. So yeah, it'd be catastrophic if we don't do something. Yeah.
See, just the thought of somebody thinking that it's acceptable to cut funding right now, we should be having the complete opposite conversation, because when you think about general ed and our learning support population, the learning support population alone has increased tremendously. Let's go all the way back to 2014 when we started dealing with the water crisis and compare those numbers to the numbers we have today. Not even taking into consideration what we're going to have to deal with in the fall when you think about students that are dealing with traumatic issues and all of those extra things, extra people, extra hands-on, extra everything that comes out of that extra funding that they're trying to cut. And just to put a personal note on it, Mrs. Strozier comes out of that extra funding that they're trying to cut. So I love our teachers, but parents, and I think they understand it now. They may not have understood it before COVID, but they get it now. The school is more than just the teachers. The school is a huge moving machine with 1,000,001 pieces, also that your child can be successful. That's like going to get a brand new car and you taking everything out of it and just leaving the engine. You don't have the battery, you don't have the fuel line, you don't have all these additional things you need to run that car. And that's what the school is nowadays. So in essence, nobody should be having a conversation about cutting funding. We should be talking about, okay, where they're going to cut funding from to put it more money into education, because that's where we're at right now. Everything that you touched on, Principal Rawls-Smith, you're right. We have to go back with these different rules and 6 feet here, 6 feet there. We have to provide signage, and just thinking about it as a parent, when your child goes to the bathroom, nobody's stalling 6 feet away from each other. Everything has to change because of COVID, but where's the money for that coming from? And I'm not just saying that because I work for the school. As a parent, I want to know. And it's beyond the district. It's a federal thing at this point. So yeah, President Trump, your vice president, your whole cabinet, who's ever listening. And I hope that everybody on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, however you are viewing this, I hope you're not just watching it. I hope you're sharing it. I hope that you've learned how to go and tag your elected official, because those are the people that need to make those decisions, because this is going to hit us. We're already an underserved population. We're already forgotten. And so when we think about the things that we need, we're at the bottom of the list. Until we make it a priority and make it self-known what our needs are, we're not going to get it. And that's why I push my parents constantly. You cannot be the type of parent to sit at home and not say anything, but make all these complaints. And forgive me if I go sideways, but I am off the clock. You cannot waste time putting out negative comments on social media about what your school is not doing for your child when you as a parent have not done what you are supposed to do. When we have not seen you all school year long, when we tried to contact you over COVID crisis and you got mad because we left you a voicemail, but come August, when we start August the 7th, I believe, we should know. We should know where you are. We should have this conversation. Matter of fact, we're working all summer long to get ready for the fall. But it's not just the school. We have to come back together as a community. And parents, I can't push it enough. You have to be that overactive parent. You should be that parent that when you walk into school or that principal sees you, your principal should know your first and last name, because they don't want nothing to do with you, because you are about handling business. That's the type of parent you should be. And that's not a negative thing, because you want your principal to know, okay, that's the mama, that's the village, and then this is who that village belongs to, this little child over here. Exactly. Because, you know, when I walk into my kid's school knows me, not because I work across the parking lot at the other school, because I'm a mama first. Yeah, I'm a mama first. So when I come over here checking on Clarence and Rosie, take Mrs. Strozier off, take Lady Strozier off, I am this child's mama, and we about to get this handled correctly, of course. But you just have to be that best advocate for your child. And when you think about funding being cut, no, parents, we need you all to step up and fight for this funding. That's why it's important that we all go to the polls in November. We have to step up and vote. We have to step up and make it known, because a quiet mouth, you're not going to get anything except for disappointment.
Ooh, yes. And we can, the memos, the emails, like you said, the elected officials, like, I don't know if there's an opportunity for us to drop that information somewhere after this call, but we need to equip people, because people want to do something. Parents want to do something. I believe that, you know, but we have to equip people with the resources and the information to do it. So, you know, I think that we need to be active about that, especially when it comes to these cuts. So I couldn't agree more.
So what we can do, and first of all, I just want to also echo the power of parents' voices. So part of the work that Black Millennials for Flint does, besides like organizing these types of events, is we work a lot around political advocacy. And what we have seen is when parents raise their voices, they tap into emotion. It humanizes this work. And so one of the things that we can do, and I'm committing this to the Flint family who is watching, and also to you, Principal Rawls-Smith, and you, Mrs. Strozier, Black Millennials for Flint is going to set up an advocacy campaign so that we can get them to stop these cuts immediately. It is completely egregious. At this particular moment in time, when our whole world is vulnerable, that there would even be consideration around any type of cuts. So I see in the chat box, yes, Black Millennials for Flint is on it. Y'all got every right to check us if we don't come through, but we are definitely, you know, going to help to set up a structure so that we can fight for this funding. This just knocked the breath out of my body. Like, it's never okay, but like right now, it's just inhumane. It is absolutely inhumane. And so we do have, you know, connections politically, both at the state level and the federal level. So we're ready to fight with you.
Come on, let's go.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So I'm gonna actually shift to the last question. Can y'all believe we almost at time?
I could do this all day. My husband got a baby, he's fine. Doing myself.
All right, so this last question, so our educators, our teachers, our school leaders, our support staff, y'all, they burn out
Yeah.
You know, when you describe just some of the work that our educators are doing, just going leaps and bounds to support our children and family, like you all, many of our educators are also parents. So can you just describe like some things that the community can do and the school leaders are doing to support their staff in such a stressful time?
Say double that again. Go ahead.
Who's jumping in? Who's jumping in? I guess I'll start with this one. You know, when I think about our employees, I mean, when I think about myself, you know, I dealt with COVID. I had COVID-19, and I can't imagine. You know, my husband had it. We were sick. You know, and I can't imagine having a demand on me at that time. You know, a demand on me when you literally fighting for your life. But I think what we have to do, we have to realize this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. You know, leaders, employers, this is not a one-size-fits-all. This is not something we can send out in a mass email and give a policy for. We have to realize who's coming back to work. You know, there'll be people like me who's dealt with it. It'll be people like, you know, maybe you or someone else who didn't have it, no one in their family got it, but they're anxious, they're nervous, you know, and we have people coming back and they've experienced loss. There are people grieving, and they are struggling with the situation of not being able to bury their loved ones or have a proper send away or even hold their hand as they passed away. And so for me, it's like, I need to be on it. I need to make sure that I am present and that I am checking on people. I have these weekly meetings with my teachers, and my dean, Kevin Johnson, he meets with his staff weekly, and we check in. And one of those first questions, it's so simple. How are you? How you doing? Ask people how they're doing. I mean, we have, you know, many employers, they have those programs where you can go and have 10 visits with a counselor and you get that for free and all these things. But we need to be personable. I'm a person that can get real focused, like I'm about these babies. What we gonna do? What we gonna do? But you have to take time to look at somebody in their eyes or speak to them through a phone or through a computer and truly ask them how they are and be responsive to that. We need to anticipate more opportunities for breaks. I can be sitting watching a movie and start crying, you know, because I'm just thinking about not only COVID, now we're dealing with racial injustice in our community. You know, that it's been here, but it's like on TV, it's everywhere, you know, and so we have to be able to be sensitive to that and give people the space they need. I've always been a person that said people need a safe place to fall. I shouldn't have to be perfect and on 10, even as a principal, I shouldn't have to be perfect every single day. My teachers shouldn't have to come in worrying that, you know, they have to be perfect or they're going to be looked at differently because they're human. We have to respond in that way. I think it's important to have conversations. I think it's important, the same things we do for our children. We talk about social groups and reading social stories, and we talk about giving them purposeful movement and mindfulness. Our staff needs that. The people returning to our building need that. They need to be able to go and take a minute and sit down and take a moment for mindfulness and meditate and pray or whatever it is that they do to get back to where they need to be to give our scholars the best. Because you can't pour from an empty vessel. You can't pour from an empty vessel. So we got to find a way to fill people up. We read a book when I was teaching in the classroom. We read a book about filling up people's buckets. You know, and you do that with affirmations and all these things. Y'all probably read that book before. But we got to fill people up. We can't keep giving from a place of emptiness and void and hurt and pain. And there has to be a place for that in the school, for our employees, for our team members, and for our parents when they walk in the door too. We need to make school a safe place to fall. And that's I don't have any eloquent, you know, data, anything to tell you in this moment about that. The bottom line is we have to pour back into our people so that they can give. And we got to quit forcing people to give from a place of emptiness. And so I think we do that, you know, yes, we give them those things that our employers have, you know, those things that are available to everybody as far as the counselors, but we begin to talk to each other and really check on one another, you know, check on us, check on each other, and try to meet the needs. If somebody tells you, okay, you act, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna give you the fake smile and tell you I'm good today. No, I'm not good today. I need a minute. Be prepared to give that minute. Don't go asking people how they doing and you're not ready to give them that minute. You know, so I just think it's, yes, there should be some things in place, programming and things like that, but we need to just be human, be family. You know, we need to get back to just really believing that it takes a village. We say it, but we need to get back to really believing it. And I see Tiffany Quinn, I used to work with Tiffany Quinn. She was my social worker at a different school. And yes, it takes a village. And part of that village is not just those babies, it's the people that's pouring into those babies, the adults. We need a village too. So yeah, I just really think that's where we have to go and moving forward.
Ooh, yes, you spoke a word. Miss Strozier. Kind of like drops mic.
Yeah. I would have to say that I think parents should understand that during this entire time when March 13th hit, everybody's building was kind of in a, okay, let me move now state of mind. We didn't have time to plan. We didn't have time to prep. We just kind of had, okay, I think this will work right now. Bam, go. And that's what we had to keep doing. And every single day, something would change. And so the plan kept on changing and changing. And then we can't do this. And we got to add that to it. But during a crisis, there is no perfect way to address the problem. But as educators, we just had to solve it. By any means necessary, we had to make something happen. And when you're making something happen out of nothing, with no prep, no planning, but you still held to this high expectation of getting something done, it's emotionally draining, it's mentally draining, it's physically draining. It makes it so that you can't sleep at night. And when you are passionate about the children and the families that you serve, you're tossing and turning in your sleep. You're having difficulty eating because you're sitting there, you're eating your dinner and you're thinking, okay, how many of my kids are going without food while I'm sitting here in a home where I have running water, I have electricity, but then you know that you have families that were struggling before COVID, and now I know they're really struggling. So it's like, I don't think people truly understand unless you are in the field of education and you are giving hard work, because that's what it truly is. You're not in it for the money. You're not in it for the fame. You're doing it because that's your calling. And when you're in the field of education, you're giving so much because you just want to make that difference in this one child, in this one school, in this one community, wherever you're positioned at. It's hard. And this was the hardest time for any educator. Doesn't matter if you were in the classroom, doesn't matter if you were a counselor, a therapist, a family engagement, you could have been a security guard. People do not understand the impact that we have on these children that enter into our buildings every single day. So when they told us we could not go back to school, your kids were hurt because we saw your kids more than you saw your kids. We had those kids Monday through Friday. From homes, it was from 8:45 to 3:45. And then majority of those kids stayed after school. We saw them on Saturday. So when we got yanked out of our schools for everybody's safety, and I'm not fighting that because that was the best decision, but that was like telling me I can't go home. And then when you have those kids that rely on that consistency of, I don't know what's going to happen when I go home at the end of the day, but at least I have school. You took that stability out of their life. So here we are trying to work out digital learning and provide this consistent education for these kids. And it's more than just teaching, but we're loving on these kids. We're building them up. We're inspiring them. We're providing them emotional stability. We're telling them, hey, you got this. But now we're trying to tell them that through a computer screen. It's difficult.
It is.
People do not understand how hard we pour out. And then we get to the end of the school year and it's like, whew, I made it. But then your insides, your gears are still going because you're still doing your job. And I think, you know, you could do the my school did a very good job with doing check-ins. We had our Zoom calls. We even did Zoom parties, and it was good just to see people. These were the same people that we used to see every single day in the building. You know, we weren't able to walk down the hall and say hey anymore, or I saw you on the other side of the building, or, you know, little things like, oh, I parked next to you in the parking lot. We're missing all of that, and all of that pours into your child's community, and all of that was yanked. And so when you think about the emotional damage that educators are dealing with, you really need to go home and pray for your child's teacher.
Yeah.
Pray for every single person that is in your kid's building, because it's just by the grace of God that we made it. Because like Principal Rawls-Smith said, some of our teachers have had deaths. Some of our teachers have had sick people that they're caring for, or, you know, maybe there was someone sick that they couldn't even get to because they had to make a decision. Okay, I have to stay here and do my job as a teacher. Because some people had to make that type of decision. But we're here servicing our children because that's what we're here for. So outside of providing mental spaces for professionals to relax and relieve that, and having a sense of community to make sure somebody's checking on the teacher, is often like, because my husband is a pastor and people wonder, well, who's praying for the pastor? At the same time, you gotta look, who's praying for the teacher? Who's praying for the educator? Because we're pouring so much into your child, so your child is ready for the world. But what about us? And I'm gonna tell you, I'm the last person I think about sometimes, because I'm always giving. But it was nice. It was amazing when somebody would inbox me and say, hey, thanks for going live so I can see my child's teacher.
Yeah.
Or when I got a voicemail that said, hey, Mr. Strozier, I'm just calling to let you know I got your message. Thank you for the voicemail. It's just the little things that we can do just to uplift those people that are constantly pouring into your child's life. I don't think it requires much. I mean, I'm not in a point of leadership. My position allows me to serve, so my answer is different from Principal Rawls-Smith. But I think what educators would like to see are the more simple thank yous, especially from the people that we're constantly serving. If parents would just take us out, I know I made my kids do it one day. It didn't make sense to them. I think I needed maybe 5 minutes just to collect my thoughts. And I said, you're about to send your teacher an email. And this was like within the first 2 weeks of COVID. Digital classes or virtual classes had not started yet. And my kids sat there, I think they typed out 2 sentences, and that was it. But it was, hey, I miss you. I hope you're doing well. Love Clarence, love Rosie. But when their teachers or the principal responded back, like Mr. Thomas called me and said, did you know Clarence sent me an email? I did. But he said that made his day.
Yeah.
Because as a principal, I don't know what you all deal with. I only know what I deal with in my little lane right here. You tell me to go, I go get it done. I cannot imagine how difficult this has been for principals, for administrators, because I know how I feel about my job, but you can't be a principal and not love it. And I'm sorry, let me say that a different way. You can't be a principal and do it correctly and not love it. So, I mean, I commend you. I commend you so much, Principal.
I commend you.
I
love your passion.
This has been a hard time for educators, but it's like moving forward, I never want to see our families struggle like that again, but I want to be prepared. So that's my message moving forward for parents. You need to be active, you need to be engaged, and you need to be prepared, because who knows what the next crisis will be. But we should learn from this experience. Like we should have learned from the water crisis. This should not happen again.
Yeah.
Ooh, ladies, I was trying to hold it together. You got a few tears out of me. I was trying to hold it together. I mean, this passion and commitment is just is what the world needs. I really appreciate your transparency and your vulnerability. That means so much to so many people, is to just be real. It really resonated with me, Principal Rawls-Smith, when you talked about like just being real with people, just being kind to people, you know, allowing people that space. Like when Mrs. Strozier said, like, I needed 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes, you know, to let me be human. I think that is so very important. Out of all the things that, you all beautiful ladies discussed today, I think that is a big takeaway, is to just allow yourself to be human, allow yourself to hurt. This hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. But again, like, not to sound like I'm taking it to church, but you know what I think about? I think about how when something great is about to happen in your life, God will make you so uncomfortable.
Come on.
He'll make you so uncomfortable. When you are growing, you stretching, it hurts.
Yes, growth hurts.
It is something so big and amazing that we can't even fathom that's going to come out on this other side.
Yeah.
Ooh, let me keep it together. And so I am so grateful for both of you all. I told you that this was going to be so inspirational. Ooh, your spirits just, I know, touch me, and I know that it touches your families and your communities, and I am just so grateful for the work that you all do. For y'all to take time with me and everyone else this evening just speaks volumes about who you are as beautiful Black women. So, again, I'm an Aries, so I get really, really emotional. So I am so grateful for you all. We have all sorts of gems in this chat box. We have Miss Flint that is dropping off all of the knowledge for things to get engaged. Again, I want to reiterate my commitment to you, my commitment to Flint. Anybody who knows me, in the Flint community, I'm a woman of my word, and we're going to fight to get this money for these babies. I did not forget. I thank you so much for raising that issue. It's just blowing my mind that is even a thing. But I respect your time. We went a little bit over time. I knew this conversation was going to be good, but this is not going to be goodbye. We're going to stay in fellowship with each other.
Yeah,
and I'm going to follow up with you all. And thank you again to everyone that attended. And y'all have a good night.
You too. This was amazing.
Right, you too. Thank you. I'm so glad I met you, Mr. Strozier.
It's good to meet you too, neighbor.
Amen.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate you. And you know, we can't lose hope. We can't lose hope. We
That's
hurt,
right.
but we can't lose hope, y'all. We can make it through this. We Flint strong.
All right now.
Okay.
Come on now. We've been through worse, and we'll get through other things too. So
You better say that.
Stay hopeful.
This is just
stay
a stepping stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, y'all.
I love y'all.
I love you too. All the feels.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Have a great evening.
You
Good
too.
night.